March tends to fall in my least favorite subset of months of the year. The joy of Christmas, so long past, and any resolutions you made at the new year, also pretty much given up on at this point, and those tend to include your reading goal. This March for me, I actually read 6 whole books, and I'm going to attempt to go through those, though most of them I do not recall because March is such a busy month, especially for school projects. I know I've been working on a lot and had to turn in a bunch, and it's been like, I just want school to be over, but it's not. So yeah, we're going to attempt to go through the 6 books that I read in the month of March. I'm going to attempt to explain them and rationalize my ratings for them, even though I don't know if anybody could do that. We're just in a different state of mind. Alright, the first book I read in March 2024 was The Traitor's Kiss by Erin Beatty. According to me, I finished this book on March 1st. Wow, barely snuck into this review. According to my review on Storygraph, I gave this a 5 stars, and I think I really did enjoy this book. I have this problem where I read a book, and I love the book, and it's the first book in a series, and then I go and try to read the second books, and they don't even compare. They're really not doing well, and then I kind of forget how much I enjoyed the first book because the other ones have kind of left a bad taste for the characters in my mouth. So yeah, that kind of happened with The Traitor's Kiss. So there's a big plot twist in this book, and that's kind of like how you keep reading. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of POVs. It's a very fun multi-POV. It's not dual POV because that would imply it's like the main guy and the main girl, but like you're in everybody's head, and then you're kind of like, why are we in this random man's head? And then anyway, there's a lot of characters. I thought the premise was good. Basically, there's this girl, her name is Sage. She's adopted by her uncle because her parents died. Yeah, that's why you would be adopted. But her uncle takes her to a matchmaker to get matched, and basically she kind of runs away. She's like, no, I won't be matched. I don't know how old she was, 16, 17, something like that. But essentially the matchmaker ends up asking her oh, do you want to work for me? I think you'd be good, you notice the people. And anyway, she kind of ends up getting a better sense for the matchmaking business. She used to think it was very frivolous and very, oh no, that's not how love should work. But matchmaking, the lady who is the matchmaker she works for actually puts a lot of time into getting to know the girls that she's matchmaking and the guys that she's matchmaking, and actually making the matches work and eventually fall in love or whatever it is. Anyway, so I thought that was a very interesting premise. As the book goes, she kind of doesn't really do what she was initially doing, but it's a good premise. It starts us in a good way. It's interesting. As far as the love interest goes in the book, I think he was very interesting, a fun character, lots of plotsy twists going on, very fun. So anyway, I give this book a 5 stars. I probably wouldn't recommend you go on to the next 2. I tried reading the second. It's over on my bookshelf right now, the second and the third, because I have this problem where I read the first book and then I immediately go and get the other 2 from the library, and then it's I actually have no desire to read these when I try to. It's they're not good. Not that they're bad, but I just can't get into them with that same joy and explorativeness that I had at first. Explorativeness is not a word. Anyway, sorry. Moving on. The second book I read in March was I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. I don't know. I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was very cute. I read this book quite quickly. I read it on my phone on the Libby app, which I had to request it for so long to be able to read this book. Anyway, but I thought it was very cute. I think I'd seen it recommended in a Instagram reel or something, but I thought it was fun. Kind of an rivals to lovers sort of vibe, and that's exactly what it is. Basically, this girl is, I'm trying trying to think, is there something like main thing she's competing for? I don't really remember. It's been a little bit. What is the premise of this book? Like, it's good. Oh, right. Basically, this girl, she kind of puts all her pent-up emotions into these emails these drafts that she puts to these people. And anyway, they end up getting sent out, and then everybody kind of hates her, but then this one guy who she really doesn't like, but then is kind of obsessed with because they're kind of rivals in this way. Anyway, they end up falling in love. They have to like work together on all these things because they like just yell at each other, and then they get these group detention type things. Anyway, it's a fun read. I really enjoyed my time through this one. I think I read it in like a day. So yes, that was my second read, which I finished on March 13th. The next book I read was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mehrer. I don't know how to pronounce anything. I'm so sorry. But yes, back in like 2020, definitely watched some of the initial like kind of TikToks that inspired this book. I mean, I think we all did, but if you don't know, Assistant to the Villain is inspired by kind of like a TikTok series that Hannah Nicole did, basically about like kind of a bubbly, carefree character who's an assistant to a villain. And it was very fun. I don't know, they were just kind of fun little stories. She put a lot of time into them, and she adapted them into a book. Assistant to the Villain, I gave 3 stars. I read through like a bunch of reviews for this, and there's a lot of bad reviews because it's not, I wouldn't say you read this for the plot. I wrote in my note about it that definition of no thoughts, just vibes. Like, it's every chapter, it's kind of like its own little story. They try to give you an overarching plot, but it's very like, I mean, you can kind of tell it's adapted from little 60-second TikToks or 30-second TikToks or whatever, because each section feels very, oh, this is a section, this is the part where this trope happens, or this trope happens, or whatever it is. But I think it was really fun. Just a fun little, you know, whatever. A quick read, a very quick read. Just a little like, you know, I'm not gonna try and think too much about the plot of this world and the story and the world building and everything, because, you know, it's not all there in that way, but I don't know, I read through it, I was like, that's fine, I'll give it 3 stars. Decent book, in my opinion. The next book I read, I finished on March 21st, and it was Stars and Smoke by Mary Lou. Mary Lou, for me, a pretty, where am I going? I like Mary Lou's books. I love the Legend series. I've read, like, Warcross, the Warcross duology, and maybe a couple others here and there. Just, I know that it's gonna be a pretty fun read, like a pretty good, I'm gonna try it, I guess. We'll see. So I give this 4 stars. It's basically about this girl, and she's a spy, and then, well, okay, so about the 2 main characters. The guy is like this famous musician, and the girl works for this spy agency, and this spy agency that she works for reaches out to this famous musician, and they're like, hey, could you help us with this project, because this guy's gonna ask you if you can go perform for his daughters. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Essentially, they end up working together, but they're not, and she ends up kind of being his bodyguard, so you get a little bit of like bodyguard romance. I mean, they're like teenagers, and it's another just kind of fun one. Pretty quick read. Trying to think what happened in this book. It is kind of a cliffhanger. I think I requested the next one from the library, so I'll be interested to see where they take the series. But you know, it was just a nice little spy something or other. I gave it 4 stars. And then the next book I read, another 5 stars for me, so 2 5 stars in the month of March, was The Splendor by Brianna Shields. This was a really good book. It kind of makes me think of Hotel Magnifique, if I'm saying that right, which is a really famous really famous. It's like another TikTok book, essentially. But this one I just picked up at the library because it looked interesting. It was really good. I don't read as many fantasies that are kind of more introspective. Like, a lot of fantasies focus their plots on the action, and like the big villain and the story on how they defeat them. And this was definitely lacking in kind of that they defeat the villain in a very creative way, maybe, but I thought it was really good in how it handled relationships in general. Basically, it's about this girl and her sister, and they're pretty poor, but in their town is this hotel. It's a magical hotel, and basically you can go there and have these incredible experiences, and it's said to give you what you most desire and let you have this amazing experience. So the younger sister, Juliet, who is our main character, saves up all this money so that she can buy her sister a ticket. So her sister, for, I don't know if it's like a birthday or something, she gives her sister like a ticket to the hotel. And so her sister goes to the hotel for a week. And that's kind of what happens before we get to the book. But what happens when we start the book is her sister comes back from the hotel and she's like a different person. She doesn't seem to have this loving connection to her sister Juliet, and no matter what Juliet does, it's like she can't get her sister to care about her at all. So Juliet is very hurt by this because they have a very close bond, like they're orphans, they just, anyway, it's very, very sweet with their relationship, and it's so like, why would my sister be acting like this? She's like, I know something must have happened at this hotel because there's no way that my sister just suddenly, for no reason, would be acting like this. So she purchases her own ticket to the hotel. She goes to the hotel, and immediately she's kind of singled out a bit more at the hotel because she's a late, I don't want to say admission sort of thing. Like, they don't have time to kind of research what her interests are, what her passions are, what her dream is for her customized experience at this hotel. Because anyway, the hotel's like magical, and it's just, I'm not going to get into that really. But so this guy who's like the adopted son of the owners of the hotel has to like get close to her so they can figure out what her interests are and like why she's at the hotel, what she wants as her customized experience, whatever. Anyway, basically Juliet ends up, this is a light spoiler, but she figures this out pretty quickly. Juliet basically figures out that her sister gave up her memories of having a sister, that she signed a contract and all of her memories of Juliet were removed. So Juliet is really struggling to understand why her sister would do this. Like, throughout the whole thing, she is so sure of herself that her sister did not do this. Anyway, so it's very interesting. It's very, like, relationship based, as I said, of Juliet's relationship with her sister and just the love that she has for her sister and kind of this disbelief of, no, my sister would not give up all her memories of me. Sorry. Anyway, so it's a very sweet book. There's also sort of some romance between Juliet and the son of the owners, and they kind of discover things about the magic of the hotel, and it's really a cool book. I liked it a lot. I thought it's lacking again in that sort of villain aspect. Like, it has a villain, but kind of the defeat scene and like the, it's kind of more thought-based, and but it's beautifully written. Anyway, a very good book. That was The Splendor.
Okay, editing me here really quick. I just wanted to reiterate how much I absolutely love this book and would recommend it. I think it's just a beautiful story, super well written, and I think it really explores the characters that it talks about and their interconnection to one another. So yes, I recommend The Splendor. I know it's kind of hard to tell where my thoughts are going, but yes, I really recommend that you read it. I think it's a really great book.
The next book I read, the last book I read in March, that I actually just finished like Saturday of March, like very close to the end of March, was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book, I think just a book I saw recommended somewhere. I gave this book 4 stars. Again, it's a really long book. It's not that long, but it's pretty long, and I was really loving it. I was really there for it. And then right at the end, it kind of got me because I was just like dissatisfied with it. I guess I have to read the next books in the series, but maybe I've just been in more of a standalone mood, and like I would have rated this book higher if it had kind of finished up in a way I was more satisfied with. But yeah, it's a very sweet book. I really like the aspect of Iris and Roman writing to each other. So those are our 2 main characters. Iris has this typewriter that was her grandmother's, and she writes these letters and then she puts them under her wardrobe and they disappear, and she thinks she's sending them to her brother who's away at war, but they're actually going to this other character, and he really loves reading her writing, and it's such like it's a very cool thing to hear someone's thoughts on writing, and just to read all these different pieces of writing sort of that are in the book. Yeah, so I really liked that aspect of it. Obviously there's like a little bit of romance, there's romance between these characters. My favorite scene, I think, in the whole thing is the scene where the guy is like, I'm gonna give this with like as few spoilers as I can. The guy's like, so this is gonna be very vague, but if you've read it you would know. The guy's walking in the field and, you know, the girl's like, oh my gosh, like you can't be walking in the field right now, whatever. And she runs out and like tackles him to the ground, and then they just have to like lay there for, anyway, it's so, you know exactly what's gonna happen and you're like, yes. Oh my gosh, screaming over that scene. Such a good scene. But I did really like many aspects of this book. I thought sort of the mythological aspect, like with the gods warring and fighting and whatever, was interesting. I feel like they'll definitely explore that more in later books in the series, and I wonder if I really want to explore it as well. We'll see if I continue the series. I'm interested. It feels like my main gripe with this and why I didn't rate it higher is because they lay a lot of story building for her brother's character in the beginning, and then they kind of try and like slide it back in at the end, but the whole middle, it's just about the main love interest. I mean, it's also about the war, you know, the war, but I just feel like we weren't consistently talking about the brother throughout the whole thing. Like a little, but it just wasn't emphasized the way it was in the beginning. Because in the beginning, it's very like she's writing these letters to her brother, and she's really hoping that her brother is going to get them. And then she finds out there's just this other person, and she kind of like falls in love with him. Sorry, my camera battery died. But anyway, yes. So those are my thoughts on Divine Rivals. Overall, I had a pretty good March month for reading, and so lots of books that were the first in the series that maybe I will go on to read more in the series. If you've read these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. If not, if you're interested in reading them, whatever. So, thanks for watching. See you next time.